But like actually going through and finding stuff like that you weren't necessarily looking for, that's way cool. I love that shit. It's fun.
Yeah. Like I know the internet is like you just go find the exact thing you want, but there's
$4 or whatever.
But like I almost never do that. I just would rather go to a record store and look through there.
Yeah, well, I just got that Rad, the slow dance song from Real Life. The movie Rad. Yeah.
I don't think I know that one. No. What is it?
Rad? You guys, Rad? Yeah. It's a old BMX movie from the 80s.
Oh.
It's so niche, Erek.
It's
you can't
rad.
expect everybody to know about this shit.
Well, I typed Rad and Google immediately was like, Rad movie, 1986 film?
Yeah. BMX, like that's it. Totally.
So
that's
funny.
a sick movie poster, though. I love that.
Sick.
Yeah. But they never released it on DVD, only VHS, because it was such a low run movie. They never released a soundtrack, but the soundtrack is classic, I will say. So I'm slowly putting that together. You just buy that on Discogs, easy.
Oh my god.
But to like find that, I would never be able to find it.
I'm sorry, I just find this very amusing that we're talking about Rad, the
We've been talking
soundtrack.
We've been talking about it for weeks, though. That's the thing.
Yeah, but it's mostly because you were so stoked that you found that record.
Yeah. Discogs.
Discogs.
Oh, yeah. So anyways, are we rolling? Is it started?
You know what really makes us mad is wasting money on CDs with only one or two good songs.
Yeah. Tell them about punk.
What's up, posers? Welcome to Punk Lotto Pod. I'm your co-host, Justin Hensley.
And I am your other co-host, Dylan Hensley.
And joining us today, we have one half of the Ohio-based band Body Farm. We have Ocean and Erek. Hey, how's it going?
Great.
Good. I thumbs up, but I just realized that you're not showing the video. Right? Thumbs up emoji.
I'm right. You're half the band, right? You've got you're a 4-piece, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Yes, Stephen on drums in Newark, Ohio. Alex on bass in East Liverpool, Ohio, and then us in Baltimore, Ohio. Right outside of Lancaster, Ohio. So they don't come up with original names out here.
Yeah, I saw that, like, Baltimore, Ohio. I was like, well, are they split between Baltimore and, like, rural Ohio? Oh, nope. It's a place in Ohio.
It's Ohio.
Yeah,
it is
it's a
rural
township.
Ohio. Yeah.
It's a township. It isn't even a city.
Just north of Athens, Ohio.
These all sound like they're from, like, other states, too.
Oh, they are. Salem, Ohio is just over here. Yeah, no. It's awesome.
Well, I'm in Hickory, North Carolina, so that regular listeners will know that.
Yeah.
Middle of nowhere.
Yeah, it's very on the nose.
Yeah.
It's a hick city.
Yeah, for sure.
There's dirt bike races out there, so I'm stoked.
Maybe. I'm sure there is.
Oh,
There's
there
more
is.
ATVs, like four-wheelers type stuff going on out here.
Anywho.
First off, yeah. I kind of became aware of Body Farm through a friend of the show, Adam Yo's review of your self-titled. It was on No Echo. And I was listening to everything you put out this year, and you guys have put out a ton of stuff already. And you've got the self-titled 7-inch to 3-inch lathe, a split with Slut Bomb, a song on the So This Is Progress Flexi, digital release of a Naked Aggression cover. So despite us being in the middle of a pandemic, you've managed to make quite an impact on 2020 as far as your release output.
Yeah, I mean, we try our best to pump out, like, powerful music that we like playing. And, you know, luckily, we also have, like, our music space inside of our house. So we try to rehearse as much as possible, and we work on material anytime we can. I mean, we're working on a completely new set right now, which we're going to be playing for a Cult Nation event that's going to be coming up on September
14th, I think?
No, it's September 25th now. They've been doing this like live online festival. So we're trying to stay as active as we can, even though we can't all be in the same place at the same time.
Yeah, and a lot of that stuff was all recorded pre-pandemic. So I mean, that second 7-inch, it came out on 420, and it was like we were supposed to be on tour. We were supposed to be playing fest. That was for a fest we were playing the next weekend that was canceled in Detroit, and we were supposed to do a short tour with Slut Bomb, and we were supposed to. So a lot of that stuff was it just fell flat on its face when and here we are, you know. But the 3-inch, we were able to record that stuff just recently with our friend at Over the Counter Culture. He came over to our practice space, it was one of his first times doing a portable studio. He just brought all his stuff and his hard drive, his CPU for his computer, and recorded us. And so that was the new stuff.
It sounds great. Is that the one with the Devo cover on it?
Yeah. So we actually have played the covers the whole time, but we wanted to record them. So we actually got asked to Live a Lie Records out of North Carolina, right? Yeah. Is putting out a compilations tape, and he was like, well, I kind of reached out to him. Are you still doing that? And he's like, yeah, give me a song. And so, all right, we need to record then because we have a bunch. And so we recorded 2 new tracks and then a bunch of covers that we just have like that we can throw out to whatever's needed. So that Naked Aggression one, the Devo one, and then 2 other ones. I don't know if we're not going to announce those yet, but we play them live. So I mean, if you've seen us live, you've seen them. It's nothing new.
Well, that's awesome. I was looking at your description, and you were calling yourselves Power Violence. Do you think that I was listening to it and I was like, it doesn't quite fit like the traditional like sound of Power Violence, at least what I think of, like, you know, almost grind levels of. There's a little bit more melodicism, I guess, to what you guys are doing. I mean, I guess that's intentional, but I take it you take a lot of influence from the Power Violence scene.
Oh yeah, for sure. We take influence from the Power Violence scene, but the thing is that like it's very hard to label what we sound like, to be perfectly honest. I have a hard time fitting what we have into like a certain definition of what type of punk it is. I mean, we're all influenced by different bands, and this is like the first full-blown punk band that I've ever been in. Like, this is the first time I've been a front person in a band. And like, you know, we all have different backgrounds in music, so I feel like whatever we've done before, we bring some of that to the table. So, I mean, we use the term Power Violence, but I mean, I think Erek would agree with this in that we don't have a certain label that we would fall under.
If we can avoid it, but I mean that would probably be the best. I mean, like how Man is a Bastard or any of those other older spaz and those things where Sticky, and even though that was kind of pre-Power Violence, and specifically Power Violence is a West Coast thing anyway. That's like that clique of bands, and everybody else just kind of names, you know, says it. But I mean, I would say that that's the best description. I know that even the Yoast review, they mentioned it's kind of Power Violence-ish. But I think more we're trying to glom onto the fact that Power Violence is just brutal. That's it.
Yeah.
And there's no other defining, just brutal and positive, I guess. And what, I don't know.
It doesn't have to be a specific guitar tone or vocal technique.
I mean, we're not Weekend Nachos, sorry.
Right.
Or whatever. Yeah. You know, which they're tough as hell, but you know, it's just for all of us too. This is the first time we've been in like a real extreme band like this where it's really fast, and like that was when Steven and I got together. They were like the drummer. We said, let's play fast, and that's it. And that was kind of the starting idea. Yeah.
Well, regardless, everything you put out is great this year. I especially love the first 7-inch came out real early on. Definitely one of my favorite hard releases of the year.
Thank you.
And that was Financial Ruin. That guy helped us out, so that was awesome.
And do you so this is Progress? Is that a label, or is it more of just your tag that you put everything under?
It's that first, but then I'm legitimately trying to start a label. Like, Scotty from Tank Crimes kind of put it out a 2 years ago, a year ago, just said start a label, and that was it. And I was like, oh well, okay, and then that was it. But if you've gotten the zines, actually the new zine that just came out Monday comes with a flexi. It's the number 1 we were on, but number 2 is all new bands. I started the zine in 2001, and it went to like 2007, and then I just stopped doing it. I got into other things, dirt bikes and traveling and things like that, still doing music on the side. But when we moved here, it was just like I need to do something again. And so I started putting it on everything, and then I started a podcast, and I said, all right, I'm paying for half of this record. I'll just we'll just do this. We'll do this. And so that was it. And so I just kind of been rolling from there and trying to, if you see the positive Ohio stuff, and like we're really trying to push our scene, because this scene is cool. It's got a lot of cool stuff going on out here. So, and in the Midwest in general, which being from the West Coast, I didn't know about. I mean, I heard of Nine Shocks Terror. That's cool. And, some other bands, but I don't know, Devo. All right. And
Marilyn Manson.
Yeah. But I never been there. And so coming out here, it's like, this is awesome. And I think people, let's promote this. And that's kind of what I'm trying to do with that. So yeah, so This Is Progress was my label, but it's just what I put on everything. And then the zine, because that was what it started as. And then, yeah.
Has it been a culture shock moving from California to Ohio?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, like, when we first got here, we didn't really have any friends, and we didn't know what was even going on here. And the only way that we were able to like break into the scene here was by going to a local spot, Cafe Bourbon Street, because they had vegan food.
Pierogi Mountain.
And it was this place called Pierogi Mountain, which they're still around. They're just in a different location now. They just reopened.
Restaurant plug.
Yeah.
Free pierogies.
So we went for these pierogies, and we ended up meeting our friend Susan, who then basically linked us to like the Facebook groups that all shared the DIY shows around here, and we just started going to shows, and that was it.
But yeah, it's definitely different out here. Different food, different weather. That's really, humidity is lame. But I like how close everything is. Like, LA, yeah, we were like an hour outside of LA, and then from there it's pretty much all city south. But then north is, I don't know, Santa Barbara's right there, but then like Santa Cruz, I guess, and then San Francisco, I guess. But like here, it's like, Columbus we're right outside of Columbus, and then it's an hour and a half to Cincy, 2.5 to Cleveland, 3 to Pittsburgh. We've been to New York, is 8-9 hours away. We just drove there to see Annihilation Time, whatever, and Nine Shocks at other time. But it's cool how close everything is, and how it's cool out here. It's cool and weird. It's fine. That's what we've come down to. It's fine. We found things that we like. It's missing a lot of other stuff, but it's fine. It's fine. It's cool.
Part of the culture shock, though, for me, admittedly, has to do with women's rights and access to abortion and inclusive healthcare for people out here. That was a huge difference between the two different places that I've lived, because in California, I felt like I was completely protected and everything's fine. But obviously that's not the case. I've learned more over time. But like being here, it's very extremely right wing, and it's constantly changing. And like we're on the news because of somebody wanting to access to abortion out here and saying ludicrous things. And that kind of like inspired me to want to be involved with, volunteering for Planned Parenthood and knocking on doors for votes and working with NARAL and, being involved with events that BQIC was putting on. And that inspires some of the music that we make too. So yeah, that culture shock was used for something.
Do you have a specific, I know you've done some like charity type stuff with some of your releases. Do you have a specific charity you think people should donate to? I can put a plug in for or a link into in the notes here.
The one that we've really pushed on, especially because of the time that we're living in right now, with the cultural awareness and things, is the Black Queer Intersectional Collective. Be Quick. They're based out in Columbus, and we work with them. Ocean actually works with them. Has been to a handful of the protests with them, and that's kind of the organization that we're closest with because it's local. But then, of course, Planned Parenthood of Ohio, NARAL, which is based out of Cleveland, right? And those ones specifically for women's rights and abortion rights. But Be Quick is a big one.
Yeah, Black Queer Intersectional Collective is really amazing because they actually have an emergency fund that is accessible to Black, queer, trans, intersectional individuals. So anyone on the gender spectrum that fits into that category has access to money that they need in times of emergency. Yeah, they're really awesome.
And they helped organize some of the very first protests during the George Floyd era that we're living in now.
The Black Lives Matter movement.
Yeah, they helped organize some of the very first protests down there. Not the one that we were at, the one that was before the one that got insane when things started really going down, which has been stressful out here for sure. But yeah, Be Quick, that one.
Yeah, I'll make sure to include that in the notes. I think I might start doing that going forward because
cool.
Dylan and I were talking beforehand. Like, I'll just go ahead and say this. Like, during our recording right now is right after Kenosha just happened.
Yeah, that just happened.
This episode will go up in 2 weeks. So we're always feel kind of weird being like talking about a certain thing that happened when then in 2 weeks something else could have happened.
Yeah, and the narrative might have changed. We don't even know what it is. It's different now. Yeah.
Right.
Or whatever. You know.
So I think I'm going to start doing that going forward. I'm going to ask everyone like what their favorite charity or their one that they're personally associated with. So
awesome. Thank you.
That'd be good. So yeah, check out the show notes for that. We'll have all of links to those places you can donate. Well, I guess we can get into the show, though. So we assigned you the year 2007. So, before we get into which album you picked to talk about, let's talk about some other records that came out this year. Dylan, I want you to start. What was 2007 for punk and punk-related things?
For me, it was Colors by Between the Buried and Me. So into that record when it came out. I was a 17-year-old death metal vocalist trying something different every week.
Oh yeah.
And that band was a huge inspiration to me. It did not help me solidify on one specific vocal technique, which I got made fun of for a lot by my bandmates. But yeah, that's a huge record, and that's a great. I can't think of a better record to intro 2007 to me, at least, because this is the middle of, or well, I guess it's kind of on it's on that peak right before it shifted very drastically from metalcore into what people would maybe call more true hardcore. But there's definitely some other trends.
Yeah,
we could talk about.
Yeah. For me personally, yeah, this was me. This is kind of a big year for me. I was kind of getting out of the metalcore stuff too, and then I'd come off of like years of a couple years of listening to like the more like extreme metals. I guess that's what I don't know what you would call it, but like your post metal stuff, your black metal and noise rock, like kind of more off of the metal's not really mainstream, but you know, it's not what you'd see in like necessarily in like a Metal Edge or Metal Hammer magazine, but if you got like Terrorizer or Decibel, you'd see it's just that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And it would take a little bit before I kind of went into like straight up just like punk rock, like melodic stuff. I was trying to think of records that came out in 07 that were big. Against Me put out New Wave. That was kind of them doing. That was the big mainstream record.
That was when they broke all their own rules.
Yep.
That was it. They would drink out of water bottles after that. and that was it. Talk business.
It's also the year of the Gaslight Anthem, Sink or Swim, which I believe we talked about very early on in our run. Right.
We did talk about that record before.
Mm-hmm. It's a strange year because it would feel like these are the records that came out right before everyone started doing like fest punk and like Latterman style pop punk, or even the Midwest pop punk thing. This like, I guess punk sort of took a back seat after the Rock Against Bush era stuff phased out and let like heavy stuff take over for a while.
Yeah.
But there's also another wave of hardcore, crust, thrashcore that was going on around the same time period. This is like the kind of when like the Cursed and Deathwish sound really took off. So we've got like Trash Talk and Shipwreck AD and
Pulling Teeth, Coliseum.
Yeah. And you two brought a couple records that you were talking about before you made your final selection for this episode. So what were y'all rocking in 07?
Yeah, so my music taste before 2007 was a lot of like, you know, the White Stripes, Smashing Pumpkins, Nirvana, a lot of just alternative rock music.
Like gateway.
Yeah, it was like my gateway into getting into heavier stuff, you know? So when I went through the list of what came out in 2007, some things that really stood out to me were like Circa Survive on Letting Go. I remember blasting that. LCD Sound System, Sound of Silver came out. Interpol, Our Love to Admire, which was a big deal to my friends and I because our favorite bass player, Carlos, was no longer in the band, and it was their first record without him writing. What else did I find? Say Anything in Defense of the Genre came out. The Horrors, Strange House. That was another album that was like kind of gothy, but kind of modernized goth, and I was really into that. Same thing with She Wants Revenge, This Is Forever. Dashboard Confessional put out Shade of Poison Trees. Another local favorite of ours, Young Livers, put out the New Drop Era.
Well, they were actually from the East Coast, but it was members from Glass and Ashes and Kenji and stuff that moved from. They were friends of ours that moved out. I think they were out of Georgia. I think they were on Lookout. I think.
No idea. I think.
No idea. Same thing, isn't it?
And then like the soundtrack.
No idea. Yeah.
And then there were like soundtrack of the summer type records for me. Like Paramore put out Riot that year. That was a really big deal. And
I just saw that and I wanted to mention it. For some reason, I thought that was 2006, but I remember that. I remember watching all those music videos on Fuse.
I know one of the people in their music video for Misery Business. He was like an extra in that. And then the Wonder Years, Get Stoked on It. That album was like a repeat play for me for like 2 months at least.
I'm glad you mentioned those records because I was looking at it and I was like, this is like another branch that kind of happened maybe in 2008, 2009. It was like the more like scene emo was kind of dying out, and then it went in the like easy core direction with the Wonder Years, 4 Years Strong, and Fireworks later. And then like the other way was like the emo revival stuff. And then of course there's the new Dashboard, you know, that kind of stuff. But this is right before the emo revival took off. And I'm glad you mentioned that Young Livers record because that was another. I didn't realize it came out so early because that sound too, I think, became really important for the No Idea scene and fest punk stuff.
It's interesting because we were just listening to the Glass and Ashes record yesterday, and that was years before that, and it sounds the same. And then Kenji which was the band before Glass and Ashes. It was all the they just played the same songs and well, they wrote a bunch of new stuff, but I mean that genre has been going on for a long time, but that's when it took off. That's interesting how that happens. You know what I mean? Where well, we've been playing this forever, but you guys just like it now, kind of thing.
I guess it's a little bit of that Small Brown Bike sound too. Like they were doing that in the '90s, and
well, I mean we did that Radon record that was recorded like 4 years before it even came out, and it was like very early '90s, and they were doing the same thing. Like
that was like
they sounded like Radon,
did, right? That was television. They waited 10 years or 7 years or some dumb amount of time to put out their record, and then everybody was over it at that point.
Yeah.
And so no one cared. It flopped. But now we look back on it, and it's the best thing they ever did. It's just a weird how that works. But, on my end, like I was saying earlier, like I was pretty full-blown had been in the scene, had been part of the punk crust, whatever thing going on in Oxnard, Ventura, starting in like 99, 2000, and then fully when I had my zine. So this is progress from 2001 to 2007. And so a lot of the bands had already been out. I mean, and so when Municipal Waste released Art of Partying in 2007, that was, they'd already put out all their good shit. And this was another good shit. It was really good, but I mean, there's a lot of other really good shit too. A lot of these bands are in their stride already, like Iron Lung record. They've already been in their stride. They're already huge, but they put out that Sexless No Sex, which is iconic as far as that's concerned. And then they also put out the Hatred Surge Endless Blockade split, which Hatred Surge is members of Iron Lung. And so that was, for me, that whole scene was going on. Weekend Nachos. I actually got to see Low Threat Profile, which put out their record a little bit before that, so it didn't make it onto the list. With Weekend Nachos, and that was awesome. So for me, it was more like about bands that I could see, than a lot of this other stuff. You know what I mean? Like it was like we were going to shows. We were, like I said, Annihilation Time. They put out their third record the year prior, so they're touring on that, and like that's like, and then they break up like right after that. But anyways, yeah. So those are the records for me. War Crime, friends of ours, they put out a record that same year. Dean Durg, got to see them at a house, Pink Mailbox, and so that's how I found out about them, and that's kind of more that Regulations kind of I don't know if not post punk, but like more like just I don't even know what to call it, Euro like clean punk, like party punk. I don't know what you would even call that.
I sampled a little bit of that record too, because you had it on your list, and I was like, oh, what is this? It's kind of angular, kind of dancey, kind of
we were all dancing. I can tell you that it was good. But saw them, and that was on the list. I was like, hell yes, that band rules. But that definitely, that Regulations was out at the time. I don't know if they put out their record right then. But Limb from Limb, friends from Canada. So I was stoked to see that. So for me, looking at the list, I was like, just stoked all these bands were on that list. I was like, I know those guys. Oh, those guys. War Cry, got to see him in an Avis garage. That was cool. The car was still parked in there, and the keys were gone. So it was Lebinden Toten, War Cry, and another band they were on tour with. That was awesome. So those are the records that stood out to me. And then as the record that we talk about, I mean, it's sentimental for sure.
Oh yeah. So that's like a perfect segue into the record. So we gave you 2007, and you selected The Fucking Wrath, Season of Evil. run through a couple basics about this record, but you might wind up knowing more than me. So they were from Montalvo, California, formed in 2005. This record was released on Challenge the Throne and Goodfellow Records, and the person on this record is Craig Kasamis.
Craig Kasamis, yeah.
Kasamis, okay. Guitar and vocals, Nick Minajian on bass and vocals, and John Crerar on drums.
That's awesome. Craig Kasamis, Nick Minajian, and John Crerar. Yeah.
Yeah. It was recorded by Roger Camaro from No Motive, and also the newest Chinkies record that just came out this year.
Yeah, he's recorded a lot of stuff too. He recorded most of the Night Demon stuff. There's a lot. He's got a lot of those things under his belt.
So I say you'll know this stuff better than I will. It's because when you selected the record, you told me you were actually friends with this band.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, all of these people involved, and then more specifically, the fourth member they added was my best man at our wedding, and is my best friend. But this was the band before it. But again, they, like we were saying, kind of a segue from what we said before too. There were bands already kind of doing this. They were in Ox versus Thunderbird. Craig was in before this. There was a band El Barbaro that was really big, doing a very similar style, and it just didn't hit till 05, 06, 07. And this is, I think, when this kind of heavy Southern Lord style punk, stoner, metal kind of started really becoming like the next thing. You know what I mean? Or the bands were just getting in their stride doing this. Personally.
Yeah, Cursed put out 3 records and toured forever, and like no one cared about them until they broke up. Like,
yeah. Well, and these guys played with Cursed a handful of times too. I think they toured with them, maybe, or maybe not, but they played some shows with them. So
yeah, I assumed with the Goodfellow connection there, that's how they knew them. Yeah, you named like kind of all the sounds of this record. It is like it's a middle ground of like crust and stoner, sludge, and hardcore, some thrash elements. Listening to it, I was like reminded of a bunch of different stuff. So I was like, oh, this bit reminds me of like High on Fire, or this sounds like a Cursed thing. And then I'd be like, oh, this kind of sounds like Tragedy, or even like newer stuff like Holy Mountain. So it's like they kind of were doing what would become a bigger sound, I think, and maybe in 08 and 09. Yeah. But they were right there, like in the thick of it. Like,
yeah, and they actually, this was only their first record. They put out a handful, I think 3 others after it, and I think they're not on Southern Lord. Were they on
TP?
TP. All 3 of them. So that's what happened. Power of the Riff. They played that show. I mean, at Fest, and it was a kind of yep.
Fun fact: I met almost everyone in the band because they all worked at the same music store, which is in Ventura, California, and it's called Salzer's Music. It's been around since the '60s, and like being, a kid going into this shop since I was like a teenager. I like slowly met all the members of this band from just doing that, and I actually ended up going to my first Fucking Wrath show because Nick invited me to just carpool with them, and that was a really sick gig. They put on so many good shows when they were around, and all of these guys have managed to stay active in new bands too.
Yeah, it was one of those members of situations. You know what I mean? They were all in a ton of other local bands, and it was just like, oh, their new band, there it is, and it was they're already connected, already, on really big shows, and already, straight to almost headlining right away. So it was kind of, it seems like the evolution of a lot of the groups and bands is Nails, or whatever ends up being is it's a culmination of all the things they did before, which was cool with this band. And we all had, I mean, like Ocean said, they were at the record stores. John Crerar was in Missing 23rd, which was one of like the bigger bands in Ventura, but he was a singer and he's a drummer in this. And Nick Minajian was in Faker Market, and Craig Gasamas was in Ox vs. Thunderbird, and so they were all already really big players in the scene. So it was the start of a continuation of a very important time in the scene, which was cool.
your thoughts on this record? I know you you were messaging me. You're like, this is hard to piece together on YouTube. And I was like, it's on Spotify. You have to take the out of the name, and you can find it.
I tried doing that, and I couldn't find it. And then I did it after you told me again, and I found it. It was much more enjoyable when I could listen to it on Spotify.
in the order as intended.
Not interrupted with like weird YouTube ads that are like the gent guitar guys, like selling whatever like software for cab sims or whatever those commercials are. I dig it. It was really good, and hearing that, you know, this band is kind of the culmination of a lot of other bands and a lot of other work that does show. For this being a debut, it's a competent band. Like, they know what they're doing. They do a really good job of weaving in a lot of other sounds, like we've mentioned. Like, it's that, you know, it's a little bit thrash, it's a little bit crust, it's a little bit stoner, like, and they do it. They pull it all off. Like, it's not like a lot of times you have a band that will try and do a lot of different things on their first record because they have a ton of different influences and they're not really good at them, at maybe parts of them, you know.
They just love it.
They just really want to do that, and they haven't figured out. Yeah, they haven't figured out that they shouldn't do that. They should focus on what they're good at.
Yeah. Play into their strengths.
But this band actually sounds like they really know what they're doing, like with everything. Really good riffs, some really kick-ass riffs. I especially enjoyed the more like Sabbath-y, stoner-y leaning stuff.
Right.
Because it's just, I love a good Sabbath riff. I mean, there's a reason people have been doing that for 40 years.
There's a reason why everyone covers them and why there's always cover bands.
And but some really, really, really great bass lines too. That was something that stood out to me at several points in this record. Like, it's not your average like chugging on the E string bass parts. You know, they really did actually write bass parts.
You hear it really on that song Hell Flies Tonight. It has like that, it's got like a weird bass intro. It's like almost not even like connected to the rest of the song. It's just kind of like a little riff that they did, and then it starts with this like super distorted like bass and just the drum holding the beat intro. And I was like, holy shit. Oftentimes when I listen to a hardcore record, the bass is just like, it's there, but you're not like focused on it. This one, it jumped out at me.
It's not leading, yeah.
Right. Yeah, I agree. This record has a ton of really cool riffs. I love the album kicks off with Ride the Lighter, which is just this like sludgy, stonery, just vibing, like a little bit of Dragonaut by Sleep going on there. Like, and it's an intro track basically. Like it kind of just like ends and then goes right into To the Eels, which is just like a fast paced, crusty, 2 vocals, killer riff here and there. Like, I really love the "It's time to run" part where they're just like he's trading off lines, and then he'll go, "It's time to run, it's time to run." Like, it's just like a killer like pump up to the beginning of the record.
Oh yeah, and that song definitely hit really fucking heavy when they were playing live.
Yeah.
It was the best. Like, just imagine like a packed bar with all of your friends, and you've all been drinking, and like everybody's sweating, and they're just like, yeah, it was just so good.
And I think that's the other thing about the record is we have the live experience way before we ever even heard it. You know what I mean? Like, so we already were like ready to mosh in the living room because that's what's next, right? All right, you know what I mean? Like, it's and I love the intro. I just noticed it today. I don't know why I never noticed it, but they do a Ghostbusters sound clip as the titular line.
Yeah.
It's Vigo, the Carpathian.
I heard that, and I was like, what is that from? And I actually looked it up and saw that was from Ghostbusters 2.
Yes. Yeah, I just noticed that. And it's is the Seasons of Evil or whatever. And that's what they named their record off of, apparently, a Ghostbusters line.
How did you meet them?
Oh, well, you could go first then.
I
Oh,
already,
you mentioned the
said that.
already
Oh,
said
you
You
that,
mentioned the
yeah.
record store
Yeah,
thing.
yeah.
Okay,
I read that in
so-
a lot of the like press releases around this time. They keep talking about the record store connection on the living on the same road too.
Yeah.
Mhm.
They so John Carrar was the singer of Missing 23rd, which was like the biggest band in Ventura when I was a little kid. And not a little kid, I was just like getting into punk, and this was the local band. You know, I like Fear, I like Dead Kennedys, I like these other bands. This is the local punk band. And so I was a super fan of their band. And I had a band, and he was like, if we put out a record, you're gonna play the record release. And like 2 years later, we played it. And he just was, I mean, he never even heard my band. I was just a super fan. He let us play. So he like showed me like, this is what punk is this is us. And he worked at the record store at the time, and he always talked to us. It wasn't like, you know, to us, he's like in the biggest band in town. But like, he's just this dude that's like, yeah, let's party. Let's, let's, or you play the show, or here's a record or whatever. And so, but there was a whole group of those guys and girls and people putting on shows and being in bands, and Nick Manassian and Craig Kasamas were also in that group. So it was just kind of a gateway to that whole group scene of people that are just in bands and or go to the shows or whatever the case may be. But it's just from shows and shows and shows and shows and a lot of shows, all the shows, every show. Like that was all it was. That's what it was.
Like, I mean, I think about when I listen to this record now, I think about going to one of the last shows that they had at like the favorite town bar that everybody played in called Billy O's. And there were so many people inside of this bar that they couldn't let anyone else in. And they had a line, which they never did because it was a dive bar, but that's where everybody played. And like, it got so rowdy that they started bringing down pieces of the ceiling when they played.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that happened also. They also did that at Take Two.
They did?
Yeah, Nails played. It was like Nails, Torch, but this was like Nails' like third or fourth show because they're from the same area too. But it was like Nails and I think Torches or Thrones, and then I think Mammoth Grinder and Fucking Wrath. And when the Fucking Wrath came, they tore down the ceiling because it was the last show ever there. They were demolishing the building, and that's the last thing you tell punks at a show. Hey, this is the last show ever. They're destroying the building. You're like, oh yeah, and then they pull down the whole roof, and that was awesome. So, but yeah, they all had a very big part in our local scene, which is why the band was also so pivotal for, and why they play all the big shows is because they generally put them on. I mean, that was who organized them and organized a lot of the scene stuff and scavenger hunt. There's a scavenger hunt, 86 scavenger hunt that actually Craig Kasamas invited me to. That was the first time I went to that because he's like, why don't you go to the scavenger hunt? I was like, I was never invited. He's like, you're invited. And that was it. And so, and so then we started going to that. And then, so it's just that's how I met them.
It's really refreshing to hear how welcoming and like in light of the Twitter discourse this week or yesterday being all about the DIY hierarchy
Yes.
and all of that nonsense. It's I love hearing stories about DIY organizers who are like genuinely nice, welcoming, encouraging people.
No, I think it's all how they were brought in. You know what I mean? If they were gate kept all the way through, what's going to stop them? I mean, yes, you could say that sucks for me, so I'm not going to do it for you. But most people I know are like, I had to do that shit.
Yeah.
So it's very likely that when they were brought in, and because that's the way I am, because that's the way I was brought in, is and that's the way Ocean is. That's the way we were brought in was with a hug and not like well, I guess or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, like one of my bands that I had before, Pep Talk, one of our bigger shows that we played was at the Velvet Jones in Santa Barbara, and it was because John C. asked us to open it. He was a part of, I don't know if he still is part of Numbskull.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's Numbskull. They book a lot of the shows out there. And that was the only reason why I played that gig was because he decided, hey, your band is cool. Why don't you guys open this show? And that was like a big deal for me. Like,
yeah,
I got to open for a bigger band because of him.
Yeah, and that's how we were welcomed in Ohio too, which was cool. I mean, we just started going to shows, and people were like, "Hey, hey, we saw you yesterday, or you go to like all the shows. I'm like, well, yeah, so do you. And then and then that was it. And then it was just like, all right, well, there's these shows and these shows and these shows. Oh, you have a band now? Play all these shows, and that was it. And so it was it's been really cool being in Ohio and being able to, very similarly to Ventura when we were growing up, Ventura Oxnard when we were growing up. And Montalvo is actually in Ventura, but it's like
this little section of it.
It's like the bar and like the Quickie Mart or whatever, and like this apartment complex. But yeah, that's Ventura, Oxnard. John Carrar's from Oxnard, so
that's good that you had that experience, because in North Carolina it's odd. Like I'd say Charlotte is probably a little more gatekept, but then like somewhere like Asheville is a little more welcoming, or like Greensboro. Like
it depends, and it really depends on the scene.
Yeah,
the scene
like
in each city.
Yeah.
It could be weird.
Even then, like when we first got here, we noticed right away that people don't intermingle as much as they did back in Oxnard and Ventura. As far as scenes are concerned, like the people that you see at metal shows will always be at every metal show, but they will not be at every punk show. They don't cross pollinate with each other, not very much anyway.
So that's why people would notice it. Like, hey, you're at the metal shows too. But again, you're at these shows too. So obviously, but where we're from, it's a smaller community, but it's like because Oxnard Ventura has a big scene. A lot of bands come out of there. But it's kind of, there's only 200,000 people. So it's not like that big. It's a good size, but it's not that big. And so it's kind of, everybody goes to every show, and it was a different way of being brought up through the scene and just kind of appreciating everything. And so I think that lends itself to the sound of just everything. Actually, Missy 23rd, that was I learned how to play that whole album on guitar one time when I was a little kid, when I was just learning how to play guitar. So, that's why this is so important. And there's so many sentimental values to this record.
I'm glad you mentioned the Missing 23rd, because Dylan messaged me earlier and he was like, oh shit, members of this band were in the Missing 23rd who were on this little comp, and he sent me a picture of the 2003 Warped Tour compilation, which I had, because I've always credited that as like a pretty important compilation for me to get me into like a wider variety of like punk music. And
all those comps are good for that. Yeah.
I'd forgotten that they were even on there, because like I looked down and it was like, oh, they're right before Mest on the back end of disc 2.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Warped Tour was pretty important in Ventura because that was like the one big music festival that would come every year. So I remember going when I was younger, and there was one time where I snuck in by just showing my Hot Topic work badge. I didn't even work there at the time. I just like walked up and was like, I'm working. And they were like, okay. And I just like waltzed in. No big deal.
She looks like she belongs. Listen.
Well, when I went that time, I snuck in too, but it was like way more like I just walked by. I was like, hey, and I just kept walking, and that was it. And they're like, and just let me go in. And that was
confidence.
Yeah, you just walk like you're supposed to be there.
That's
like,
the trick.
That's what the lanyard helps. You're just like, I'm supposed to be here. And so if you're just like, I'm a punk and I am supposed to be here, then they go, all right. But yeah, Missy 23rd ended up getting on that fest for a little bit, and then there was that famous Bored Wild show at the exact same spot that Warped Tour was on. So Missy 23rd was playing, and people were stage diving, and they didn't like that, and so they turned the power off. But then they did like an a cappella part of one of their songs. I don't know the whole song. everyone is equal, they're the same. I can't remember how this goes. But anyways, and everybody
Struggle?
moshed. Yeah, struggle. Everybody moshed like to just the drums, and everybody was like singing. That was epic. Yeah. I like
I guess
that
we
band.
can talk a little more about the record.
Yeah. I mean, that's the hard part. Is like it's a good record. It's awesome.
You
I love that record.
you pitched it to me as like a Cursed sounding band, and I was like, all right, I'm interested. I'm a big
Yeah.
Cursed fan. So I was like, I'm gonna try this out. I'm looking forward to it. And so I was kind of pleasantly surprised by the record, knowing that it was like a style that I would probably like. But the first time I listened to it, I had just got off work. I work 12-hour shifts on the weekend, and my wife was like starting dinner, and I was just exhausted. So I just went in the bedroom, laid down on my stomach, and played with our pet cat, Edmund. And I listened to it all the way through right then, just laying on my stomach, petting the cat for like, it's like a 26-minute record or something like that.
Yeah.
And when it was over, dinner was ready, and I was like, well, shit, I don't know how objective I can be, but this was the perfect way to like wrap up this
down.
day.
Yeah. Did the Cursed reference at least give you got an idea what it was going to be like?
Yeah, like I was like, oh, that's interesting, and I told Dylan, and Dylan told me that it's a Goodfella record. So I was like, okay, that's definitely a promising sign. And then like listening to it, it's like, yeah, it has a little bit of the Cursed thing, but it's also just so many other things as well.
Oh, yeah.
Like you wouldn't call them a copycat of Cursed.
No, not at all. Yeah,
No.
It's just everything cool. That's the way that I think about it. It's everything that's cool is on this record, right? And it's not just like, oh, that's that Twisted Sister riff that's awesome, or oh, that's that Sabbath riff that's super cool, or whatever, or they did that Maiden part. It's just like a bunch of rad riffs that are, it's all put together very well, like you said, I think, and kind of set the bar high for how your first LP is supposed to be when your band just starts. for Ventura and kind of that, like I said, Annihilation Time was already big at that time, and so it was kind of that evolution into that more rock oriented punk thrash of where we were from, and where the Wrath and a lot of these other bands that were really hanging on to that started going.
Yeah, I was surprised at like knowing that it was their first record, but also knowing that they have other bands before that kind of got them prepared and like how to work together as a band. So that totally makes sense. Did they have like even like demos or anything before officially, or did they go straight for this?
Let me see. They had one thing. I was just looking at it. They had a CDR.
Yeah, that era. That was like the only thing anybody had.
They had a CDR with, it looks like it was a demo of this. So it's just their demo. Yeah. So I mean, it's like Old Man in the Sea, to the Eels, Hell Flies Tonight. So it was probably, if not this recording, these songs, and that's what they pitched to put out this record.
I love Old Man in the Sea too. That song is just It's like everything that the band is in one song, because like it starts with like the sludge stoner stuff and then like speeds up halfway through. Like that's like
it's got the battling vocals and it's got the whole thing going on, and Nick and Craig, that was really good. And then like you said, after that they added Brent, and so now they've got they had 2 full stacks and a double tower bass, double cabinet, 2 810 bass cabs, and like it was out of control.
So loud. They were like one of the louder local bands too.
So good.
But it was so good.
That reminds me of we have a North Carolina band called Torch Runner.
I was gonna say that reminds me of seeing Torch Runner in a house in Asheville, and they've just got like one of those big giant acoustic 8x10s and like probably an SVT 8x10 on top of that, just turned sideways for their bass. And like huge guitar stacks, and I'm like, this is too much for this house.
You're gonna rattle the roof.
Mostly gear in this house. Yeah.
Something fun about it too is look at the cover. Doesn't this just like make you think that this record is going to be about some like epic night journey where you're going to slaughter dragons? That's like what I picture the like whole record. Like when I listen to it, I'm like, this is totally a Dungeons and Dragons type fantasy going on in my head right now. Like
Yeah,
when
I
I
was
listened to this album.
I was curious about the art. I looked up the artist Nat Dam. He's from that band Akimbo. I don't know if any of you
Yeah.
remember that band.
Yep.
Oh,
Saw that. Yeah.
Who also did art for those records too. And
Right.
because I was looking at it and I was like, this looks like something I like a style wise that I've seen before. And then when I saw the Akimbo, I was like, oh, okay.
Oh.
They're always really cool Akimbo records. That's what I was.
Yeah. I think isn't the guy that does the artwork for Baroness in Baroness?
yeah.
I think it's that guy. So they have like the best artwork. P.S. I'm in the band. So it was free. Or whatever.
Yeah,
No, that's so simple.
John Baisley. That Baroness's Red record actually came out in 07. I was looking at that. So I was like, oh, that's their best record.
Hell yeah. I was in
Yeah.
Canada and we were supposed to play with them and they didn't make it across the border.
Mhm.
But the flyer's cool.
I've
I don't
seen
have to
some
say
of that Baisley artwork in person because
Fest.
Fest did like an art show one year and they had some Baisley like originals and I was shocked at how small they were. They're like that big. Like they were
Oh,
real
wow.
tiny pieces, but they're incredible. A couple $1,000s too. But I bet now it's probably even
A
worth
couple
way more than that.
Infinity dollars.
Yeah.
I was looking up good.
I'm looking at these Nat Dam. There's a lot of posters. I've definitely seen this artwork elsewhere. Not just the Akimbo stuff. I feel like probably like some robotic empire type bands and some good stuff.
Heck yeah.
Yeah, I was looking at what Goodfellow was doing around this time too, and they had some cursed records, they had some Intronaut stuff,
Mm-hmm.
Heck yeah.
and The
Which was-
Secret. And,
Yeah. People from our scene as well. They were in a Destroyed Babylon. So that band Destroyed Babylon. Drummer of Intronaut was in Destroyed Babylon. Nick Manassian in Destroyed Babylon.
we were talking about Intronaut today, actually, because we
Yeah.
were reminiscing about 07, and we were remembering that like we saw ISIS in Charlotte, and like the Jesus was supposed to play, and they couldn't, so they had Intronaut and Torch as the openers, and yeah, it was just funny.
Yeah, that's not bad.
Yeah, right.
And
I'd
that
rather
was-
see those bands than
That was Torch. That was 4-piece Torch.
yeah.
Oh yeah.
The other guitarist hadn't left yet, which I'm really glad we got to see them then,
Heck
because
yeah.
that got us into that band.
It's a fun band. They're good. The band
remember
is good.
My girlfriend at the time, she was from Ecuador, and when we were like watching Torch play, she was like, I think these guys are Hispanic, and and so like after the show, like as we were like leaving, we like walked by and they were kind of like sitting there, and then she said something in Spanish to them just to like see
Test
if they
them.
were on. Yeah, I was like, they're very clearly Latinx guys, but and then like they started a conversation in Spanish. It was awesome. Like I was just
Perfect.
like, oh, that's cool.
Heck
You got a
yeah.
connection at the show
funny.
you didn't care about going to, but
It's
Yeah.
funny when that happens. Like we were at some random Mexican restaurant that was like just over the border from Indiana back into Ohio, and that was probably the last time that someone did that to me. I think it's fun when that happens.
I don't know what you're doing, Dylan.
I'm
But
trying to remember his name. Is it
Oh, the-
Juan Montoya? I
On
think
the left?
was the long-haired guitarist.
Oh, I have no idea.
Um,
I don't know anybody's name in that band.
he played
I
an
know that-
Explorer that I thought was so cool. It was just like the right paint job, and
I know that one of the guitar players who left Torch ended up starting a new band that we also liked, and we saw them open for who was it? I think it was for Red Fang.
Is that Floor?
No, I thought that was their band before that.
That was
Yeah.
That was the band before Torch.
This is one that was after Torch.
Uh,
I would have to look up that show.
So many shows.
Monstro.
Hmm.
Mm.
uh,
Let's look up Torch and their associated acts, shall we?
Killer Be
Yeah.
Killed.
Mm.
I don't remember.
That's his current band, I guess.
Oh yeah, that's who it is then. I think they were the ones that like opened that show, and there was also Big Business
Yeah, Big Business and
and Red Fang.
Red Fang and Killer Be Killed.
Pretty sure that's
Sounds
what the
about
lineup
right.
was.
Sure.
Another good band. Another heavy band.
I was looking at what Goodfellas. Yeah, I already mentioned that. I talked about the Goodfellas stuff. Yeah, The Secret. I don't think that big Secret record had come out yet. I think that was a couple years away. But I was surprised to see their name on that list too.
Yeah, the goat skull one. or whatever.
I feel like everybody checked that record out just because of the artwork.
Yeah.
Which I've actually been doing that lately because one of my friends was like, "Oh, people don't really buy albums because of the artwork," and I thought that was a really weird thing to say because I buy all kinds of shit just because it looks cool. Like that's all kinds of stuff. If it looks lame, I might not want to buy it. Like that. I'm trying to think of something recently that I didn't buy because I was like, restraining order. The newest restraining order. I was kind of like, but then I got it, and it's one of the better new records I have. And so I try to do that. It's just buy records because it looks cool, and then see what happens.
I saw that Drain album cover, and I was like, "Shit, that's gonna be cool." And like I listened to it,
Yeah.
and it was good, but I was just like, "Man, this cover's awesome."
Yeah, or even like Gulch, like that just looks like it's badass. Like it
Yeah.
doesn't even. I don't even know what that is. Like what is that? That 10-inch cover and the new one. I don't. What is
They're
that? It doesn't matter. It's so tough. Doesn't even have the name on it. That's how confident they are in Gulch. Is this? Look at this artwork. No name. Don't worry.
It's like when everybody was doing hardcore records with houses
the
on
houses
the
on
cover.
House that Hounds of Hate and Ceremony. And
Our
it's
band
just
did
a house.
that.
Yeah.
We had a house on our cover.
Okay. I think they said that Hounds of Hate one because the drummers in the singers in Heavy Discipline now. They were like, yeah, that was just a rando house. That was not any particular house. It was just a house that we had a picture of. Such a weird. Or Das Oath did that too.
Ceremony.
Ceremony said that. What for? What? I don't know. Yeah. I mean, are they all trying to be Minor Threat minus the people? I don't know.
Yeah, it was a weird little trend. I don't remember where that started, but it was we were part of it. We did it too.
Yeah.
I sent this record to our guitarist, just thinking he might not have heard it, because I was really surprised that I hadn't heard this record before, because this sound in like 2007 or 2008 is something that I would have been interested in hearing, and this came out in like the Blogspot era when I was definitely looking up bands that way, and I'm surprised that this one I hadn't heard this record or really even heard this band. I sent this to the guitarist that was in my previous bands, and he was like, "Oh, I've actually listened to this like a ton of times." Like,
he's gatekeeping you.
Yeah,
That's what happened.
Not sharing.
Yeah, it's one of those things like, why? I mean, I don't know. You don't know this kind of thing. Like when I brought it up, hey, the fucking Wrath, and you guys are both, we've never heard of that. I'm like, oh, well, okay. There's other bands like this, and this is cool. And yeah, you know what? It's probably because there's a cuss word, so your computer blocked it.
They actually did have an issue with booking and announcing that they were going to be on shows because of their name. So for a while, a lot of their flyers just said TFW.
Yeah.
Because venues didn't want to put out the fucking Wrath and like block letters for everyone to see.
The Wrath was already something else, so they couldn't be that. And so that's why like their record, I can't remember what it's called with the wizard on it. It just says TFW and like smoke, because that was like the whole thing. Like, we can't be the fucking Wrath right now. But even then, like when they first came out, it was like a cuss word in your band name. All right, go for it. Fine, okay. And then that's what happened, I guess.
I knew their name, but I had never listened to any of their records before, so I didn't really know what to expect going into it. Yeah. I guess Fucked Up kind of like made it so that it's more accessible.
Yeah, that's okay.
It reminds me of our friend of ours who worked at a store in the mall, and he was like had his flannel buttoned all the way up, and he was like, I can't take my flannels off because I got cuss words on my shirt.
Yeah, that's funny. I got
like sweating.
Oh my god, that makes me think of like high school days when I had this like I had a 5, 6, 7, 8 shirt that looked like a Ramones shirt, but then on the back it said "Girls Kick Ass," and I couldn't show it off at school, so I had to wear a sweater all day long. Or someone had to like put tape on my shirt. Like I remember my art teacher doing that for me one day because she was like empathetic, and she like thought punks were cool because she was the art teacher. So
and of course you're a kid, so you're like, I gotta wear my cool band shirt to school. Like I'm not gonna wear it.
I went to the show the night before. Like, let me wear this shirt. It's cool, right?
Well, I was looking at my notes to see if I had anything extra in there, and I think I kind of covered everything. Yeah, I just want to say I really enjoyed this record, and I appreciate you selecting it for the episode today.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm glad. Thank you for having us on, and thank you. I'm glad you got to listen to something new and like it.
For sure.
Yeah, it was super fun sharing like stories about it too.
Yeah. Yeah, I love the personal connection too, because like a lot of people tend to just pick like big records or like ones that like people will know, and you've picked one that we might not get a lot of people being like, oh yeah, I know that band, they're great. They may just be like, who's this? Like they might check it out based purely on your selection. So
yeah. Well, and then you can put the link to it with the for Spotify,
and yeah.
Because they have the other
thanks
one.
to doing this, we got this record on Spotify.
There you go. They found it.
Weird. We couldn't find it at all. So like I don't know. It's weird.
Well, I think, like I said, I think what happened was the other one is TP's, The Fucking Wrath, and so they couldn't use that because it's already a band. Because that's like when we put our band on Spotify, like we had to verify that was us, and it couldn't be a copy and all this other stuff. And so that might have been why they had to do that.
Yeah, it's such an odd, Spotify is a weird site or app.
Yeah, I had a podcast. I started my podcast and I had it on there, and they deleted all of it.
It's all because he played a Loretta Lynn song in the background as he was talking.
That was it. That was the end. That was the end of that. Spotify, nope.
Weird. We definitely play unapproved music clips on our show, and we haven't been pulled yet, but
fingers crossed.
Sure. Yeah, it'll be a matter of time for somebody. We tend to play a lot of punk stuff, so that's maybe why. And punks aren't really going to go like, "Oh, you got to take this down," unless you're.
Yeah. Well, I got like 30 episodes in, and then that Loretta Lynn song was in the beginning while I was talking, and then the next day everything was down. That was it. So.
Even the ones without it.
Yeah, everything.
Mm-hmm.
The whole account was deleted. So, but that's YouTube did that. I did a video, and in the background, I guess there was somebody playing a Red Bull owned song in the background of one of the shots, and they shut down the YouTube channel for 90 days. Like it was shit. So,
YouTube's even they're even worse about that kind of stuff. I've never bothered putting our show on YouTube. One, because podcasts on YouTube are kind of odd, so I don't know, but I know a lot of people do it. But
yeah.
We have a couple friends who do that too.
Yeah. But thanks for having us. Don't forget to be quick.
I was gonna say, where should we follow Body Farm online? Where should we get the 7 inches, stuff like that? Let everybody know where they can get this stuff.
Okay, so you can find Body Farm on Spotify. You can find us on Apple Music. But if you want to purchase merch, you can go to sothisisprogress.com. We are also on Bandcamp.
So this is progress.bandcamp.com.
And then as far as Instagram, it's Body Farm Ohio.
Yeah, and then our first 7-inch was actually released on Financial Ruin Records, and so I already sold out of my copies, so they've got some copies left through Dead Tank Distribution, but there are some other distros that have it. I think To Live a Lie has some, and Solar Funeral has some, so we're sold out of those, but everything else is available. I have everything downstairs in some boxes because we didn't play any shows. So we got our second, our split 7-inch with Slut Bomb out of Cincinnati, and like about 2 weeks after there were no more shows. And so we've got, boxes of 200 sitting there. So if anybody wants one, we got them.
Y'all got great merch too. Those shirts are killer with the knives and stuff and the skull art.
I print that stuff in my garage and DIY screen print it. And then the artwork, the newer artwork stuff is from this kid in Indonesia, civil action art. Some reason I liked something or followed something, and all of a sudden I started getting all these emails and likes from people from Indonesia doing art. I don't know why, but this kid does some killer art, so our last couple things have had his artwork on it. So
he also did some artwork for Gel, who we also love.
Yeah.
That's funny. Our friend runs a label called Bitter Melody Records, and he worked with an artist from Indonesia as well too. There's like
few of them.
It's kind of cool. Like Indonesia's got a sick like art scene for like punk stuff, metal stuff.
Absolute End. That guy makes like bootleg punk shirts, so they're usually long sleeves, and he draws a lot of it, but like replicates it. But also does a lot of other custom artwork. That's out of Indonesia. The kid that we work with, and there's a handful of other ones. It's kind of
they've got a sick scene going on there too.
But it's really cool. Yeah, all my friends. Stench Consultants went out to Indonesia, and they said you got to go. They're a Columbus band. So.
Well, once we're allowed to go places, I will go everywhere right now.
Exactly. Well, and that's what we were supposed to play. We just canceled our East Coast tour that was supposed to be last month, or supposed to end August 1st. So last month. And then we're supposed to play on the West Coast in November. Probably going to have to cancel that.
We'll see.
We'll see. But we're supposed to record a full length, so we're looking to have a full length LP in January, February. Yeah.
Awesome. I can't wait to hear that. That'll be great.
It should be good.
Yeah. Well, we're on all the social medias as well. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and Facebook, or Twitter. We're at punklautopod. We have an email address. It's punklautopod@gmail.com. We have a voicemail line, and I don't remember what it is off the top of my head, so I'm not going to worry about it. It's 202-688-PUNK. That's how it goes. So leave us a voicemail. Yeah, I guess that'll do it for this week. So we'll sign off here.
All right. Awesome.